Hey folks, welcome back to the DarkHorse Podcast Livestream Q&A number 101, customer service.
Now with more Fairfax.
With more, oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, he's right there. He's waiting for his treats. We're going to start with the Discord question this week.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. What is the evolutionary story behind the autumn colors? I read that the autumn colors don't seem to simply be a side effect of leaf senescence. If it is an active process, then I would guess it has been selected by evolution. What are the hypotheses for why the leaves of certain trees change color in autumn, and what is the evidence supporting or challenging these hypotheses? Cheers and happy autumn, everyone.
All right. This is an awesome question. Unfortunately, so I had a long-standing interest in this question, and things during the brief break since the main live stream, we looked a little bit into what has recently been published on this, and there has been a lot published. There are quite a number of hypotheses, some of which seem like nonsense, others seem interesting.
You want to just show the three papers that we found?
Sure, we could do that.
Zach. So this is the one we were first thinking of.
Yeah,
this is Hamilton and Brown.
Bill
W.D. Hamilton being one of the greats from 2001, published in the Royal Society as a handicap signal, basically about signaling to would-be leaf predators that you're not the one to eat. They should move on. I
think this is actually a terrible use of the term handicap, which is surprising coming from Hamilton.
Yeah.
But I would say what he's really saying is honest advertisement, right? An honest advertisement of the presence of anti-insect compounds, which causes those insects to go elsewhere, makes sense both intra and inter specifically.
Yeah. No,
so handicap is confusing because handicap typically refers to the Zahavi handicap principle, which is a feature of sexual selection. So while I personally actually have invoked the idea of in my dissertation, I wrote about insects, essentially plants borrowing the eyes of insects to evaluate mates, which I still think is a really cool idea, but that's not what they're getting at here.
Oh yeah, that's plants borrowing the eyes of insects to get mates is about pollinators. The insects are pollinators; they're not predators.
Right. So in any case, I think handicap's just the wrong term here, and it's honest advertisement that they're after. I will say that the key thing, actually, I'm heartened to see there's a more recent review which you sent me, so presumably you have it there.
So I can show it. This is 2009, published in Oikos, one of the major ecology journals. Classification of Hypotheses on the Evolution of Autumn Colors by someone named Marco Archetti at Oxford. Lists a bunch of things. It's just kind of a mess.
It's a mess.
The abstract alone. I mean, not to say that he hasn't accurately classified what's out there. I didn't have time to read the paper yet, but the mixture of hypotheses seem both just not alternative to one another, and some of them are just patently absurd on their face.
Right, but what he does do is he alludes to the very same logic that undergirds the adaptive test that people will find in our book. And basically the point is lots of people have invoked the idea of leaf senescence as the explanation for the coloration, that basically these are leaves
just what happens. Yeah.
Dying, they're pulling in pigments that are useful because that's the efficient thing to do, which leaves some arbitrary color behind. Now, that has been a nonsense explanation to begin with, on the basis that different continents have different propensity to have these displays. So, for example,
even when you control ish for phylogeny.
Well, the point is that logic suggests it should more or less be universal. And for example, I believe it is Europe doesn't have autumn colors the way North America and at least Japan and maybe all of Asia do. So,
but I mean, I do think you still need to control phylogeny. But this story, which you told me I haven't vetted independently, but you have said that what you just said is true within maples, within Acer, and so that's why not control for phylogeny as long as we can.
No, I agree.
But,
if control for
the
phylogeny,
sugar maple has the brightest and everything. Here on the West Coast, we've got big leaf and vine maples, a lot of them, and they go yellow, but they never go. They don't go
vine
red.
Maples go a little bit orange, but
a little orange, but they don't go full sugar maple.
Yep, no, nothing does. But anyway, the point is
apparently European maples don't.
Right. Yeah. A simple leaf senescence predicts that it will all look rather alike because it all suffers the same degradation, which will be uncoordinated. Now, what this paper points to, which I didn't know, is that the color change actually is indicative of the production of anthocyanins. The very fact that something is produced that results the color change tells you that this is adaptive in nature, because why would these plants be producing something in a leaf they're just about to lose if it didn't have value?
You said that's in this review?
Yeah.
And is that going to, do you remember, and I can just look up anthocyanins, de novo in autumn, and it looks like it's across trees, like he doesn't specify, yeah.
So in any case, what that does do is suggest that we, instead of spinning our wheels,
and this has been known since 1971, he says. So we've known it's not just a byproduct since then.
We haven't known. We should have known. Right. Okay. And the point is, that's why this adaptive test is so necessary, is that once you learn to spot, hey, actually, we are responsible for explaining this phenomenon on the basis of adaptation, that one maybe not, then you've got a whole different puzzle, rather than, having a debate each time about whether or not this is adaptive.
So actually, Zach, show my screen again. This is the same Archetti 2009 review. Can they still hear us?
I have no idea. I don't know what just happened. We do not know if you can hear us. I think they do.
All right.
Tommy, can you hear us?
So can you show my screen? There we go. So this is the same Archetti 2009 review, and just the very beginning of the introduction has the point that you just made, Bret. The simple fact that anthocyanins are produced de novo in autumn, however, a fact that has been known at least since a seminal paper by Sanger in 1971, suggests that autumn colors are not simply a byproduct of senescence. That's amazing. And that does, once again, makes a person wonder why it is that the senescence hypothesis is still being taught in so many classrooms.
Right. Well, because, the problem is this, any place that people want to be sort of freed from obligation to explain things in certain ways, they throw up their hands, and it looks like, in psychology, dreams are random firings of the brain. Really? An expensive coordinated phenomenon in which you mull over difficult situations that you have encountered or might encounter. That's a random phenomenon? No, it isn't. Or Steven Pinker with his dismissal of the idea that music is evolution or is adaptively meaningful by saying, well, it's just all sorts of things that we gravitate to. It's cheesecake, right?
Yeah.
And so I can't figure this one out, so I'm just going to claim that it's not figure-outable because it's some rando process.
And it's all over. I mean, the field, evolutionary biology has its problems for sure, but the field that we are closest to, which does this most obviously and clearly did it here, is ecology. That, very often we'll just make these blanket claims about, like, well, evolution couldn't have done that. Like, hey, what are you talking about? That's too fast for evolution. And like, well, that, that's what phenotypic plasticity is for. And that's what, all of these kinds of changes that we talk about here are about. And there is no time scale at which evolution cannot act.
Right. It's amazing, though. You'll get, there is this failure to recognize how powerful a force evolution is, and this belief in random processes that far outstrips their capacity to do anything, right? Like the idea that our genomes are degrading fast enough to explain the increase in the necessity of orthodontia.
Maybe it feels sophisticated. Maybe it feels like drift, like genetic drift is like the anti-religious position. I'm smart enough to know there's no sky god, therefore it's all random.
I actually am going to be a bit nastier about this.
Okay. I thought that was plenty nasty.
No, you have not begun to dip your toe into the puddle of nasty, because what is going on here, in my opinion, is that there's religious folks who we dismiss. Now, you and I don't dismiss them, but who we sciencey types love to wag our fingers out and
while
dismiss.
Wearing the lab coats.
Right. Yeah. And so, why are we wagging our finger at religious people? Because we have an explanation that's so much more powerful. It's Darwinism. True. It is more powerful, and it's mighty interesting. But you know what? Most people do not have the chops to do it well. And so the idea that evolution is a bigger landscape than Darwinism, and we can default to focusing on things that actually you don't have to be good at, because there's not much to say about random processes other than they exist, right? So
Yeah.
there's this gravitation to it's the sophisticated, mechanistic, scientific landscape of evolution without the difficulty of having to understand Darwinism, which is actually difficult.
Yeah.
Right. And anyway, all right, I'm done being nasty.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it doesn't suit you, but nor did that particularly seem that nasty. All right, have we?
Yes, I'm just exhausted, I guess.
Yeah. Did you, to the original question about the various hypotheses of leaf color, I did not have time to familiarize myself with most of these, most of which don't seem particularly powerful, but I don't have.
Yeah, I don't have the sense that there's I don't spot one that's obviously right in here, but I will say the sort of Hamilton was a super genius eccentric who, he was sort of famous for having outlandish intuitions which turn out to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And
he was willing to look ridiculous.
He didn't care. He was just he was a bold, interesting mind, and
kind of like, and yes, very much so. We met him once. We knew him just a tiny bit. I only remember the once, but
met him in Santa Cruz. Met him.
Yeah. That's right. He was at Michigan as well. We met him more. Once we were more sciencey. But he reminds me, his role in evolutionary biology reminds me a bit of, in a field we know less about, Carrie Mullis, whom you mentioned in the first one. Someone who was just willing to be very, very out there and didn't care about about his reputation.
They had that characteristic in common. I don't think they were similar, but anyway, the point was his intuition, and the paper that you showed was about the idea that these plants are signaling to insects in a way that is unfudgeable, therefore an honest advertisement, because it would be more expensive to fake the advertisement than just to do the work. So it's proof of work, more or less. In nature, proof of work being a crypto idea. But
nature got there first.
Ain't nature grand? Ain't nature lit, as the subreddit declares it. But the point is, a plant produces a compound that is correlated with its defense against insects. The cheating and producing the color without producing the compound would be more expensive. Therefore, you might as well actually produce the compound, which means that the colorfulness is an honest indicator of how much of the defensive compound there is. Therefore, an insect, upon seeing the color, can take it to be an indication that that plant would be more expensive to parasitize than this other plant. And so both within and between species, the aphids in particular are being driven to other individuals by bright displays. Therefore, that this really is about insects evaluating something that they can see visually. I don't know that that's the right answer, but it's at least a coherent kind of an answer, and it's still apparently a viable hypothesis. So anyway, I wish we could give a better answer, but it's going to take more digging than we've had time to do. Yeah,
indeed. All right, on to the questions asked at darkhorsesubmissions.com. Quote from Isaac Asimov: Science does not promise absolute truth, nor does it consider that such a thing necessarily exists. Science does not promise that everything in the universe is amenable to scientific process. Please comment. So this I did not know this Asimov quotation.
Yeah.
This strikes me, assuming it is, I don't think I'm tricked here, but assuming this is an Asimov quotation, this strikes me as three distinct statements. Science does not promise absolute truth. Science does not consider that such a thing necessarily exists. And science does not promise that everything in the universe is amenable to scientific process. I would say to the first and third, certainly true. Science does not tell you that you 100% will get there, but that it does suggest that you're getting to a better and better model. Whether or not you will absolutely get there, you may disagree with that. Science does not promise that everything in the universe is amenable to scientific process. I think that's right. Science does not consider that such a thing necessarily exists as absolute truth. I think it assumes so. I think it has to assume so. And I'm surprised that Asimov would say that second thing.
I agree.
That's the part of this that strikes me as very strange.
I think this is not his best work.
Yeah.
If this is in fact him. But I would say I disagree with all three of these things. The
All
first
three of
one, least of all.
Yeah, okay.
I think you nailed it. You just didn't use the word asymptote. And the idea is, science does not deliver absolute truth, but it asymptotes towards it.
Right, and we may be so in some realms we're so far still that using the scientific process is not anywhere close to saying, and we did science to it and therefore we know this is true. It's like, well, we did science to it and we hope that we're therefore closer, but we're still miles away.
Right.
Yeah.
Some places we're miles away. Sometimes we're very close to the asymptote. But the basic point is that's what you should expect: is that the gap between what is and what our model says is grows ever smaller, and at some point they hopefully become indistinguishable, which doesn't make them identical.
Right.
The second claim was
science does not consider that such a thing necessarily exists.
That's the third one, right?
No, it's the second one.
Okay.
You want to hear the third one?
Yeah, what was the third one?
Science does not promise that everything in the universe is amenable to scientific process.
Right. Now, I just don't even really understand this claim.
I mean, for me, I go to appreciation of art.
Yeah, but no, that completely inside of...
It's evolutionary, but, amenable to scientific process. I mean, maybe we need to figure out exactly what he means by amenable to scientific process.
Let's put it this way. You got patterns in the universe, and they are all, in principle, something you could direct the scientific method at. Is it worth directing the scientific method at all of them? No, lots of them not. And
okay, so amenable, but in some cases not the most interesting or valuable tool.
No, definitely not. Okay. But I would just say it's almost the sleight of hand is, dude, it's the universe, right? The universe is the set of things that can be addressed with the scientific method. There may be things outside of the universe that we can address with the scientific method, but they're not in the universe, right? The things that are in the universe are in the universe. It's a tautology.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. And then the middle one, the one that I said I don't agree with at all. Science does not consider that such a thing that is absolute truth necessarily exists.
I think it does assume. I think that the fundamental assumption of science is that it is all one story without gaps, that we study different effective fields, as it were. We make progress. There are gaps between them. There may be things that are so difficult we can't sort them. But in principle, given infinite time and infinite interest, we would eventually have a complete model.
Well, but no, now you're again talking about amenable to scientific process. We're on the last one now. We're talking about basically whether there's an objective reality or not. That he's saying that science doesn't consider that such a thing, that objective reality necessarily exists. And I would say, well, of course it does. If it doesn't...
I don't think it considers it. I think it assumes it.
Right. Yeah. This is a poem. I'm tired of hearing folks flub both your names, although I am sure that they're trying. Perhaps it would help to politely point out to them Weinstein rhymes with Hying. That's all.
They don't rhyme, do they?
Why hi? I mean, I think it's the sty. I think both of the syllables that tend to get mispronounced in our names rhyme with each other. And then they both rhyme with the first syllable of your last name, which no one mispronounces.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But you just made me explain poetry, so that never goes well.
Ah, got it. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. My apologies.
I apologize. I already clicked on it, but I think that was the mountain moderate, so apologies to you.
2 mechanisms for nailing it every damn time.
Do it.
Right? Yeah. Hying rhymes with flying. Mm-hmm. That one's, once you hear it, you can't unhear it, right? And I am grateful I have made a trade with Benjamin Boyce. Mm-hmm. The Boyce of Reason. That was my creation.
Yes.
He gave me... it's Weinstein like the Bagel Brothers, but with a W. Which, again, once you've heard it.
Yeah, it's
right?
good. It's good.
Solved. It cut the Gordian knot on that one.
Yeah, very good. Incidentally, I forgot to mention, I had a terrific conversation with Benjamin this week. It's the first time I've been on his show, and he's a delight. He's so wonderful.
He is a delight. I have not yet heard your conversation.
I haven't either, but I lived it.
You did live it, and I saw him crowing about it, so it was apparently pretty great.
Yeah, we had a great time. I feel like he's the one person in the wake of the Evergreen blow-up at Evergreen whom we came to know. Right?
Right. And
so, no, actually, that's not. I mean, that's not entirely true. Stacey Brown.
Well, Stacey Brown, we met in the last 5 minutes of Evergreen for us.
Right. But that's the same thing for Benjamin Boyce. It was exactly the same moment. Exactly
I
the
guess
same
it
moment.
was.
Like literally
We
within
became
hours of each other.
Aware of him. I became aware of him as the result of his video from the library in which he explained the commitment of all people who make videos at Evergreen to shoot vertically.
No, you didn't. You've forgotten.
Have
He was one of the Evergreen 17, and he wrote this letter. He and 16 other students unknown to us wrote this letter within a few days of May 23rd that was like this shot in the dark, and it was extraordinary. It felt like, oh my God, there are other students out there besides the ones whom we personally know who are objecting to this. And I wrote back to him, and that began our relationship. And we met him shortly thereafter.
All right. I do have this miscategorized.
Yeah.
I have to say, I want a do-over for
really?
everything.
You
that
want to
has
go back and
happened
live that
since
again?
May 23rd.
You can do that on your own.
You know what that sounded like? That sounded like, but if you're going to be an obstructionist, work on your own. Remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
Benjamin and I didn't spend any time on that ridiculous moment in history.
You didn't mention the canoe meeting?
No, the canoe meeting went unmentioned. It did.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, for one thing, you two were both there. Didn't know each other yet, but I was not there.
Right. I was thinking of you.
No doubt.
How the hell am I going to explain this to Heather?
Yeah, there have been a few moments like that.
Yep.
Well, like the sea lions and the Willamette just this week.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm. Equally implausible.
Well, they were very plausible sea lions.
Have you any stories of people you know who have climbed their way out of cogdom to do something awesome? Signed, a woefully reluctant cog.
I think a huge fraction of the people we know who just make terrible cogs did climb out of cogdom.
Yeah, were forced into it at some level. I mean, I'm looking for the iconic example. I'm searching my memory, and I never do a great job when I first run across a question like this of coming out. It's like, what's your favorite? I don't know. I forgot all the examples of whatever the category was you asked me about. And similarly, just being asked the question here, I've forgotten all of the people and their stories. But I guess the stories that I am coming up with are more like, my own, having just, having worked retail in high school, having worked in college, and, having seen what the fallback position is, and having been assured, and then, the year between college and graduate school for me, while you were still getting your degree, and I worked at the grants office at UCSC, which is not like a cog in a lot of ways, and exactly, white collar office work with a desk that doesn't even have a view of a window. And within 3 days of that, I was like, must never find myself fated to this. Right. So that's different though. This is I'm now working some cog feeling job. How do I get out? And it's going to be different depending on your circumstances. And I feel like I do have stories, and I can't think of any right now. I feel like I have heard stories, and they are worth sharing, and I don't remember them at the moment.
Yes, I'm thinking of some stories. I just don't know that we're at liberty to tell them. But
because they have too many identifying features?
Yep, potentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think some people who are quite close to us have stories that amount to did the cog thing, found my way out. And
are there any salient features of finding their way out that you could share without giving up?
I think it's implicit in the question. At the point that you realize I can't be a cog. I'm not happy doing this. It's not a long-term strategy.
You leap.
Yeah.
You maybe start. I mean, it is in a different domain. It's the choice between customer service room 101.
I was just
and the wall of fire.
It's the wall of fire versus customer service. Yeah.
Yeah. How likely would you say it is to get COVID-19 from a kindergartner, a 2-year-old? Kindergartner and 2-year-old is not the same thing, but okay. We have high cases now, and this is our only real exposure vector. I'm not totally sure I get.
Right. If the answer is you've got a high caseload amongst tiny people, I don't see any reason to think the likelihood is low.
Right.
I would think it's...
I actually have not seen any. I've literally seen no even pretension of evidence on this question, whether or not the little tiny children are spreading it to adults. I've not seen any analysis at all.
Yeah, but I would not think there is any reason to think tiny kids are safer, and there's at least one reason to think...
You mean safer from being vectors? Yes. Yeah.
Right. And
they're much safer as patients, as people.
They're much safer. They themselves are safer. Yes. And they may be much more resistant to getting the disease. In fact, that's probably pretty likely. The innate
but
versus...
because of those two things, I wonder if they might not vector it less well, but I've not seen anything.
Well, there's a difference between less well and less often. Less often could be downstream of they catch it less often, and therefore it's rare to...
Well, but no, I'm controlling for that.
Well, but I know, but I'm making the point that these are two different things that sound alike. And...
No, but less well inherently means if you have it, do you transmit it? It's not a population level well. You're just not getting it from them because they never have it. That's not a question of less well.
Well, anything is possible. I don't think we know. I don't think we have evidence. And I would certainly treat them as, if they are infected, as likely to transmit. And the worst that can happen is that's too conservative because they were less likely to transmit.
Mm-hmm. Can the vaccine passports and mandates be stopped? Is it possible for all of us to hold the line and make it cease for good? Thank you both.
I think so. I think one very heartening factor is that a tremendous number of people who are pro-vaccine are vocally anti-mandate.
Yeah.
Now, I do think that there is a mirror image of that position which needs to exist. And this is certainly my position. There are circumstances in which a mandate could be justified. We aren't remotely there. Right? It would take an extraordinary situation. It would be a different disease. It would be different vaccines. It would be different public health authorities. It would have to be all three of those things would have to be different and up to the challenge.
Not this disease, not this treatment, not these authorities.
Right. In this case.
But there is a situation that perhaps shall remain hypothetical forever, in which you are arguing that a vaccine mandate could be the right move.
Right. And in fact, I would just put it this way. It is a special case of the social contract, and the thing on the other end of the mandate has to live up to its side of the contract. Right. And in this case, it is in breach of contract across so many different domains that there's no frickin' way this thing has the right to mandate this, especially over this disease, right? Especially given what it is it's mandating. But just as I am grateful to have people who are pro-vaccine and vocally anti-mandate, I think we need to recognize the flip side of that as people who in principle could sign up for a mandate under the right circumstances, but are not of the impression that that is in any way justified here, right? That's a much more nuanced set of categories that one can land in than pro or anti.
So yeah, I don't know. That Southwest Airlines thing from a week and a half ago or so looked promising, and then it disappeared.
Well, but here's the problem.
Canada's moving forward on crazy.
Here's the solution. The mandates are facing a lot of people who will not accept them, either out of principle or out of medical concern or both.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the world looks like if we unperson some substantial fraction of every profession that faces a mandate. This is not a long-term viable solution. And so I do have the sense that the glaringness of the contradictions is going to be ever clearer, and that the garbage mainstream media is going to have an ever harder time obscuring the fact that, we're going to decimate our military over this. Are we so sure that's a good idea? Right? Our police? How can that possibly be a good idea? Air traffic controllers, pilots. Really, we're going to do this to all of these essential, what did we do when essential services were the question at the beginning of the pandemic, right? The point was, in light of the requirements, we exempted them because we had to get the stuff done. Now we're going to do the exact opposite. We're going to cannibalize our society because mandates are more important than society, right? That's really what they're telling you, right? So, so I do think, yes, I do not underrate at all the terrible prospect of having to choose between your job, or worse, your career, and a completely unjustified mandate. But I will say I'm heartened by the number of people who have said, actually, this is an uncrossable line.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do think it's winnable, and I think probably we're closer than we think.
Wow, this is great, actually. It is so rare for you to be more optimistic about a situation like this than me.
Oh, I was just kidding.
Don't say that.
Sorry, now I'm just kidding.
No, it feels super bleak at the moment. It's not helped by the change in seasons and the number of places for us locally that we're not going to be allowed to go.
Yep.
Because we can't go outside because restaurants won't let us in if it's inside, and theater and things like that. And it's remarkable.
Yeah. No, it's amazing that we're here.
It's amazing. The conversation about intuition reminds me of neural networks and machine learning. A neural network can find associations in data that aren't understood by the trainers.
Yes. And so this is actually the hazard of the narrow AIs that now police search and feed algorithms, is that we don't necessarily even know what they're optimized for. We don't know what kinds of feedbacks they are introducing into our collective sense making. The people who wrote them don't know. And they're also moving targets. So we can't even use science to figure out what our AI is doing to us because it's not static.
Yep. Boy. Lots of good questions here. I gotta say, the first almost 2 hours that we spent sort of took it out of me. So here we go. Batshit crazy. You both use the term, but let me ask the resident bat expert. That's you. Is there a mental pathology or disorder caused by contact with batshit? Where did this term originate?
It's a great question.
You used to hate it when I said batshit crazy.
I did know.
You thought, why are the bats being focused on
I
here?
felt an obligation to stand up for the bats. You
exactly.
better believe it.
Yes, you did. No, certainly not.
Well, first of all, okay, there is a pathology that is at least indirectly downstream of bat feces, and it is COVID public health policy. It is. We are going crazy. This is probably downstream of a fecal swab from Yunnan province that descended into a lab, got tinkered, and here we are losing our
fecal
goddamn mind. Yeah.
Really, not blood.
I believe this was a fecal swab.
Okay. I was going to accuse you of going full literally false metaphorically true, but if fecal swab.
No.
Okay.
I'm just all literal all the time.
Oh, yeah, sure.
No. So, all right. Here's the interesting thing. First of all,
just stay optimistic, man. You gotta be the optimist today.
Okay. No, I'm
today.
on it. I'm totally on
one
it.
Day.
Actually, no, from here on out.
Oh, see, you're lying again. This is not helpful.
Okay. It is possible that batshit crazy is actually, if you've seen Brazil, you remember how...
Do you mean like Rio and Sao Paulo?
No. The movie.
Which you should. You should totally.
You
I mean,
should
you should see
totally
Brazil
see
as
it.
well. I've only spent some time in Manaus. You've never been to Brazil, right?
I've
Never
been to Brazil.
Never been. Oh, man. Brazil. But
And
anyway,
yet,
we're talking about the movie.
I've
yes?
never been to Brazil, and yet I have a certain amount of saudade for it.
Mm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
The movie. Gilliam? Terry Gilliam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a particular moment in that movie in which I believe it's a cockroach is smooshed to the ceiling and then falls into one of the automatic printers, causing a shift from, is it Buttle to Tuttle or Tuttle to Buttle?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so the wrong guy gets the letter.
The wrong guy gets the letter and then is disappeared by the authoritarian state. But here's my point. It is possible that batshit crazy is actually the result of some sort of clerical error from catshit crazy, because that actually does exist.
Doesn't sound as good, though, does it?
No,
No.
but it's literally true and metaphorically true.
Toxoplasmosis. But
Right.
isn't there something that is
There is.
but in caves in particular. So in places where the aerosolized stuff from the guano actually collects, is concentrated.
Histoplasmosis.
There it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
histoplasmosis. But as far as I know, histoplasmosis doesn't drive you crazy. It's a respiratory disease.
Yeah.
So this is something I never dealt with because I wasn't a cave guy.
Mm-hmm.
I was a tent making bat guy, which meant I was out in the open air. And what's more, oftentimes I could do my work during the day because I was looking after the bats in their roost. And so anyway.
Still, if you were a cave guy doing work in the day, that wouldn't have protected you.
Oh, yeah. Cave guys.
Caves don't have better ventilation in the day.
No, they really don't.
At least not so far as I've found.
No.
Yeah.
But in any case, so toxoplasmosis is... Wait a second. Did I just...
No, that's
reverse
right.
them?
That's cats. Yeah.
That's cats. Toxoplasmosis turns you crazy. It's from cat feces, causes rodents, for example, to be too bold and to be consumed by things like cats. That's part of its life cycle, which is why it affects the mind of people who catch it, is that it's built to modify cognitive processes, or at least that's the story we tell.
What is it? What kind of a organism is it? Remember? Toxoplasmosis? I don't remember. Anyway, just curious.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Histoplasmosis is a fungus, and
Yes.
histoplasmosis is most common in poultry farming. That's the place that people encounter it
yes.
most often. But yes, bat biologists who hang out in caves are also vulnerable to it. Did you find out?
Okay. CDC is the first thing that came up.
Yeah.
First sentence. Toxoplasmosis is considered to be a leading cause of death attributed to foodborne illness in the United States. Toxoplasma parasite. Toxoplasma biology. It's a protozoan. Great.
Protozoan.
That's not that helpful. Yeah. Not a virus, not a fungus.
Not a virus, not a fungus. See
Yeah.
if it thinks it's safe and effective.
It's the CDC. It either thinks it's safe and effective, or it'll turn you into Hitler.
Right.
You know.
It does want it. There's no middle ground.
No, there's no middle ground. God, I used to rely on them. Before traveling to figure out which vaccines I needed and what kind of prophylaxis for malaria, given what species were where I was going of malaria.
Back in the day.
Hey. Okay, that question was... Oh, I don't even know. Maybe I already hit yes to it. This is a new one that I haven't read yet, but it just came in, and I'll just read it. Robert Kennedy Jr. has sued vaccine makers for use of fake placebos in studies that try to have the placebo group have just as many sick people as the test group. For any study where this situation has occurred, what evolutionary consequences to either of the groups may be expected, given that people are complex systems?
Well, I don't really understand the question. Obviously, if anybody has swapped in something that causes harm, this is a monkeying with the baseline problem. If you swap in something in place of a placebo that causes harm to disguise harm in the treatment group, obviously harm is the thing to look for, whatever the harm is.
Yeah.
I don't know that, evolution's all well and good, and obviously it plays a role here because the critter in question is an evolved critter. But basically the answer is whatever that thing is.
Yeah. We don't know what it is.
Right.
Maybe is the fake placebo just the thing, the treatment, the vaccine, or is it something else? Is it all the other? Is it the adjuvants, for instance, that maybe making people sick? I don't know.
Don't know.
Yeah, there's too many moving parts here to answer it as written. Should we consider the naming scheme mRNA vaccine a kind of Russell conjugation? Gene therapy is what we're being given. Love you guys.
Oh boy. Okay, good. Let's just do it. Here's the problem. I get that there's a technical justification for calling this gene therapy, right? And in fact, I've heard Robert Malone talk about it in these terms, and he would know.
Oh, that's interesting.
But the problem is, I don't think it actually, even if it's technically right, it's a little bit like calling an enzyme a catalyst, right? An enzyme is a catalyst, but that really does not bring
It
up the
undersells
right.
it.
It does not give you the right impression.
Okay.
The reason that this, to me, does not amount to what we understand to be gene therapy is that it does not, if everything works as we expect, end up inscribed in the genome of anything.
Right.
Right? So
Right.
it's happening outside in the cytoplasm. It then functions as if some gene in the nucleus has transmitted a message to the ribosomes.
Yeah, it borrows some of that machinery, but temporarily
Right.
is the design, is the intention.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's put it this way.
And really, and I've seen no evidence that it does become a permanent part of the genome. Like nothing.
I've seen hints of stuff about how it could happen, but
Oh, I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I've seen nothing to that effect.
the thing is, there's good reason to think if it does that, it's very, very rare.
Mhm.
And so let's just say maybe it doesn't happen at all. It's certainly borrowing some machine. It's very fancy for a vaccine because, it's actually getting inside of cells and getting cells to put something on their surface, which suggests they've been parasitized by a virus, which causes the immune system to react to those cells, which at the very least, and I took a lot of crap for saying this before, but it's obviously true. Cells that are displaying foreign antigens are assumed by the immune system to be parasitized, and they are targeted for death, right? Now, could that be worth it? Sure. Right? But how many cells are being transfected and in how many different tissues? Those things are not well controlled here at all.
And not only is it very fancy in the way that you just described, but it also, in order to get the mRNA not to be mRNAsed immediately, it's also cloaked in LNPs and lipid nanoparticles, which is another kind of fancy and new. And wait a minute, there are known serious consequences for that for some people, and basically we don't know what the consequences are for most people for the LNPs.
Right. What's more, the little message that got stuck into those LNPs that gets taken up by the cells, that gets transcribed by the ribosome, doesn't behave the way we intended it to behave.
Oops.
Right? That's just like so many different oopses here, which on the one hand, I don't think it's that many oopses if we had understood this to be a promising prototype and, okay, it went wrong in these 3 or 4 different ways. And then, so we're going to have to fix that before this ever gets to the public.
Right.
But instead it was like, hey, these are great. And
that's what prototypes are for.
Right. So this is a prototype, and that's the problem.
Yep.
But the question really is it gene therapy? I don't think gene therapy calls up the right image.
Agree. That has never felt right to me.
I think the idea that these transfect people is a fair term.
Transfect. Okay.
Which is different than how a regular vaccine works. Anyway, so let's put it that way. I don't think gene therapy, even if it's technically the right term, I don't think it evokes the right things.
Yeah. Lab leak seems less worrisome than knowing this came from nature. Am I the only one who thinks this way? Also, recent diagnosis, ankylosing spondylitis, psoriatic arthritis, and Crohn's, along with heart failure and PAD. I don't know what PAD is, all caps. I'm not vaxxed. Is there immune concern? So I don't know how to respond to the second part of that. That's a lot of diagnoses and
You read the first part again?
But the first one, the first part of the question, I think is fascinating. Lab leak seems less worrisome than if this came from nature. Am I the only one who thinks this?
No, in fact, I've made that argument.
I know. So it's been a while. It's been like well over a year, I'd say. But yeah, I mean, if this is what we are being told it is with regard to the amount of carnage it has wrought, that's an if. But if this disease is what it is in terms of having created the kind of carnage it has wrought, and it just, jumped from a bat, and we are encroaching ever more into the territories of wild animals, and thus the frequency with which zoonotic diseases emerge because they've jumped from one species to another is going to increase. That's really bad news. On the other hand, if this is of our own creation, and it's due to a kind of research that actually, if it had been put to a vote of anything beyond people with financial interests in the downstream effects of the thing, and people could have said, yeah, actually, not that, not gain of function, no, then this doesn't happen again.
Well, probably doesn't. Yeah, and that's right? That's the argument I made was that virus has to do two things to make a jump like this. It has to figure out how to infect people. That probably happens with some substantial regularity, but it also has to figure out how to move from person to person. And that double problem is an insulation. And to have laboratories turbocharging viruses, basically solving a problem for them, which is giving them the opportunity to learn that trick, is a huge danger. So yeah, I do think as tragic as it will be if this is a self-inflicted wound, which it seems ever more likely it is, that is by far the easier problem to solve.
Indeed. At least in theory. Thoughts on the latest revelations on the NIH, EcoHealth, and Wuhan, and the lack of mainstream coverage?
Yeah, obviously. Look, Fauci was obviously lying. He was obviously lying. You can look at my tweet from the day he said that, and I pointed it out with 3 different emojis.
Did you?
It may have been 6 different emojis. It was a pants were on fire, noses were growing. I don't remember. There was a certain number.
Is there an arrow with a bullseye?
I don't recall, but doesn't matter. The point is, look, if you've been paying attention, you know Fauci
what moment did we arrive at?
Was lying. And, the NIH was, of course, anything but straightforward in
complicit at least
acknowledging this. Even their acknowledgement is tortured, completely tortured.
Yeah, it's as tortured as CNN's response to Rogan going after Sanjay Gupta. Right? Have you seen CNN's response?
Oh, boy, have I seen CNN's response. Yeah, it's all of these people who... it's 1,000 different versions of. It depends what the definition of is. Well,
but I feel like Clinton was on firmer ground with his argument, as much as it was laughable at the time.
Yeah,
than CNN is, and then NIH is.
Agreed. But okay, so yes, how many different times here's the real point. The riddle is this. What exactly would this guy have to be involved in?
Which one now? NIH?
Fauci.
Okay.
What exactly would he have to be connected to, and how closely before we would be forced to remove him from being in charge of the public health response? Causing the pandemic, being like one of a couple of people directly in line with the very research that even let's give him the benefit. I'm not even sure about the doubts, but let's say that this didn't cause the pandemic. The dude still was involved in circumventing a ban on gain-of-function research that could have caused the pandemic. That's not enough to remove him from a position of authority over the public health response?
And still, people, the media, can we celebrate Halloween, Dr. Fauci? How about Thanksgiving? Are you going to let us celebrate Christmas? This guy?
This guy.
This guy gets to decide that?
Yeah. All right. But I have, in the last week, had a little bit of a change of heart.
Have you?
Yes, I have. I have come to the
Is it what has bred your remarkable optimism?
I think an error in your perception is entirely responsible for my optimism.
An error in my perception.
Right.
I'm just... What does that mean?
It means you're perceiving an optimism that may not be as optimistic.
No, okay.
No.
Oh,
Look,
I thought that you were telling me that I was being unduly pessimistic. I'm like, please tell me. Yes, good. Get me back to...
Oh, no.
Oh.
Sorry about that. No. All right, let's leave me as an optimist. Okay.
Just for today. I told you, just for today.
No, look, I actually don't think I
could use a day.
I think I'm a realist. And I do believe we can get out of here, that actually what lies ahead could be great. I do think we're going to fuck it up and not get there, but I don't.
But we don't have to. We don't have to.
It's not. It's very late, but it's not too late, right? So,
the moment that tune of yours changes, I don't know what I'm going to do. Okay, you were set.
Go fishing at that point, but
paddleboarding probably.
Yeah,
but you know, if I pick up some fish along the way, then we can eat
for a day.
I feel like you were going somewhere else. You're going somewhere else.
I was.
Okay. Sturgeon. We're going to pick up sturgeon and eat sturgeon. Because we're better armed than turkey vultures. We can get in there.
Right. Okay. Now I'm losing my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
I was going to dangle a little teaser.
Okay.
I have changed my tune. I now believe Anthony Fauci is excellent at his job.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do. Are you going to say anything more about that?
Nope, not this week.
All right. Yes,
I've convinced you, haven't I?
Not just now, for those of you who think we're both losing our minds, but last night or the night before over dinner.
Not losing, loosed.
You've got the producer snorting. The dog was snoring earlier while you were doing a monologue, and I thought that might have been coming through the mics. I don't think it was. It's very silly here today. It has to be. We have to be able to laugh. We have to.
No, it's that's what happens beyond the wall of fire. We laugh.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. How long have we been at this, Zachary?
40, 55 minutes.
Which one is it, 40 or 55 minutes?
I was correcting myself. It was 55.
55 minutes. All right. Would you vaccinate 5 to 11-year-old children? With these vaccines against this disease? No.
Only if they had been very naughty.
Oh, wow. No.
No. All right.
No.
Look, here's the thing. That's an unforgivable joke.
Yes.
But it was a joke.
Yes, I know, but not everyone will know, but not everyone will choose to claim that they know. Wow. Okay. Yeah. No. Not these vaccines with this disease for that age group.
Yep.
No. The school... You did it. That's it. Wall of fire it is. The school district here in Cambridge, Mass. is mandating that all students get the vax as they come available. The rationale seems to be that children are vectors of the virus, and this will stop community transmission.
Look, even if that's true, we don't know that it's true, but even if that's true, it is not acceptable to expose children to medical harm in order to protect old and infirm people. It just isn't. And the way
if that's our society, we get a vote.
We never had the conversation. And the fact is, look, you can make an argument. This is not me making the argument, but you could make an argument. Hey, everybody's got 2 kidneys, right? Some people need a kidney. Can we appropriate kidneys from your child to save some old and infirm person who needs a kidney? We're going to save a life here, and your kid will probably live their whole life on the 1 kidney and be fine. Can we do that?
Real good chance.
The answer is no. It's immoral. You don't do that. You protect children first. And the fact is, we are in the position of just sort of presuming our way into harming kids to protect old and infirm people, it's not something a reasonable civilization would do. And I can't believe that we are not having the conversation that this is just simply out of the question, even if they are transmitting it.
Yeah.
It's not only unnecessary, but it's immoral. It's just immoral.
It is. It is. 2 more questions. Oh, one of them is just a comment. The YouTube channel Primer has some great animations of evolutionary concepts. Thought you'd enjoy it. I'll try to save it here, although it's hard with this system. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
You know it? Okay. Wondering what your thoughts are on the new Ngenic vaccine from Australia. Nanocell delivery system seems amazing. It's got a targeted delivery technique. I don't know anything about it, and I don't actually, the word Ngenic is new to me. I don't know anything about this.
I don't know anything about this either, but I would say, the obvious questions are, is it spike protein based? Anyway, maybe it's implied in this term, but I would love to know, does it contain the recipe for more than one antigen? Does it involve invading cells and exposing them to cytotoxic T cells, which you imagine the cells that are making it to be infected? What's the basis? So anyway, we should look into it, but I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, one more question. A guy who says, whose moniker is Irish Guy, says, why do they put toxic mercury in our mouths and fluoride in our water?
Okay, I got it.
Good.
They put mercury in our mouths and fluoride in our water because they're not very smart. Why are they not very smart? Because somebody put mercury in their mouths and fluoride in their water.
There it is. This has been a unusually uplifting episode of Dark Horse Podcast Q&A. We'll be back next week with more talk of sea lions.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe salmon.
Sure.
Maybe salmon. Maybe some more, I don't even know what. I'm sure there'll be more COVID because we're not getting out of this anytime soon. But let's hope. Let's hope that Bret's optimistic mood both persists and is called for and is an appropriate representation of what is to come.
Let's hope it's contagious.
The mood should not be contagious if it is the wrong mood to be in.
No, this is my optimistic mood.
I know, but I don't want the mood to be contagious if it's not an accurate representation of how you should be feeling. I only want it to be contagious if it's accurate.
I want it to be contagious if it's useful.
If it's a catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Let's do it.
A catalyst or a rancher of any kind.
A rancher? So what you
Catalyst, rancher.
Yeah, you did.
Didn't really work, but I thought it might. Going forward, I thought it was worth a try.
Sure, yeah. All right, pick up our book. Pick up Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, and give us feedback. We'd like to hear it. We really want people to be reading it. We're excited about it, and cannot believe the landscape into which it got delivered after over a decade of thinking about it and never having imagined any of the current moment. What else? Maybe that's it.
It's been a long one.
It's been a long one. All right. Be good to the ones you love and eat good food and get outside.
Be well, everyone.